Conflict is everywhere. Some conflicts are between nations, others are between individuals. The question is not whether you will have conflict, but how you deal with it. You can fight back, you can ignore it, hope it goes away. You can go to a court to decide who's right or wrong, or you can mediate.
What the hell have you done to my yard?
What are you talking
Get
about?
over there. Look what you've done, you idiot.
Get out of
What
here!
kind of a fool are you?
Well, thank you for coming to mediation.
These parties decided to give mediation a try.
For coming to mediation to participate in the process. The way that we're going to begin today is I'm going to tell you a little bit about what mediation is, and then we will start the actual mediation. So mediation is the opportunity for the two of you to work through your differences by talking about it with the help of a neutral third party, a mediator. It's the mediator's job to help you to talk and reach agreement. We do not tell you what to do. We do not judge and decide who's right or wrong, nor do we give you any advice. So what comes out of this today is up to you. If you do reach agreement, it will be you who decide what that agreement looks like. This process is voluntary. If you do reach a point where you feel that the mediation is not working and you wish to end it, you may do so. And similarly, we as mediators have the opportunity to end the mediation at any time. The way we begin the process is we will begin by meeting with the two of you together, and then if we think it will be helpful, we will meet with each of you individually. Everything said in mediation is confidential, and in the event you ever did go to court, we could not be called in to testify. Anything said in individual session is also confidential and cannot be disclosed to the other party unless you agree that it can be disclosed.
We'd like to establish a couple of ground rules, just some basic ones. Try and use respectful language, and try and speak one at a time. We understand that some of the things said here may be upsetting and you may want to interject. And if it's not your turn, we ask that you take some notes. We do want to hear your questions. We want everyone to be able to have a chance to say what they need to, but we do want to try and give people an uninterrupted chance to speak. Before we begin, we ask everyone to sign an agreement to participate in mediation, which covers some of what we've just explained, but also cites the relevant Massachusetts law about confidentiality. If you want to have a quick read over it and then sign on to it, we as mediators will also sign on to it. How are you folks comfortable being addressed? Jenny and I know, because we've worked together before, are fine with first names. Are you both comfortable using first names?
That's fine, yeah.
It's quite all right. Call me Bert.
Okay, Bert?
Josh.
Josh. The person who contacted the program, we typically have go first. So, Josh, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what brought you here today?
Well, last Saturday morning, I hear this really loud banging noise on the door. And so I open it up, and Bert is standing there, and he starts screaming at me. Now, I didn't even know who this person was. And I just have this person at my door yelling at me, calling me names, cursing at me. I mean, it was unbelievable. I had no idea what was going on. And finally, it came out that he was upset about some yard work that I had done. And I got so angry at him for coming to my house on a Saturday morning and just yelling at me that I slammed the door in his face. Now, it turns out he's my next-door neighbor, but I had just moved in a few weeks ago, so I didn't even know who he was. And my wife said I should really come to mediation because we don't want to have to live in this house with a crazy next-door neighbor who is really angry at us for whatever reasons.
The chief things I heard there is you didn't even know who Bert was when he came, as you said, knocking loudly on the door Saturday morning, and that you were angry that this person was knocking on the door and you weren't even aware why.
Yeah, I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Like one thing that you might be interested out of this session is what I'm hearing is hearing from Bert possibly why that was. You didn't know Bert prior to him coming over?
No.
This is the first time, the first interaction you folks had had?
Yeah.
Bert was angry about some yard work that had been done?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that
a
little more?
I don't know what. I mean, he wasn't talking sense.
Okay, so from your perspective, the angry exchange, you weren't sure what was going on, and you're here to figure out what was going on because you were angry about that situation.
Yeah, and I think I deserve an apology ultimately.
So you're interested in having some kind of apology out of this. Is there anything else that you want to add right now before we hear from Bert?
I just have one question.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you have done about this between when this incident occurred and today in terms of contacting him in any way?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Bert, let's hear what your side.
Well, this kid and his family moved in next door several weeks ago into the home of that had been occupied for about 40 years before by my really dear friend who passed away recently.
Sorry.
John Morris. He was a great guy. He takes out his big power mower and comes over mowing my lawn and wipes out a rose bush.
So that's it?
That
got you so upset?
Josh, we're going to, like I said in the beginning, we encourage you, if you could jot down your questions. I do want to hear what's going on. We just want to give Bert a chance to get his side of the story out before we kind of have a more informal exchange. Thanks.
How can you talk with somebody like this? You know, he comes over, takes his power mower, gets into my yard, starts mowing my lawn, which I admit was long. It needed mowing. It's not easy to keep up a big yard these days. But he wipes out a rose bush that my kids had planted in honor of my wife who passed away 3 years ago. And yeah, I was mad. I'm still mad. I mean, I can't imagine doing that kind of a thing to a neighbor without even talking about it or asking. So that's, he's the one that wants to mediate. Fine, let's mediate. But this, that's absolutely insane.
So what I'm hearing is that you feel that that the lawn and the whole area was intruded upon, and that you miss your friend that was there for your wife, and that this whole thing has some emotional component to it as well as worrying.
It's got some emotional component. Of course, I miss my friend, but what I am angry at, and what I was angry about that day, and still am angry about, is that this kid comes into the neighborhood brand new without even finding out anything. We don't have a fence between the yard. We've never had a problem with that. And he brings his mower into my yard, wipes out my wife's bush, and doesn't even bother to ask me if he can, that's what I'm angry about.
Alrighty.
And
So you feel that he didn't speak
I don't
with
think
you.
I owe an apology. He's the one that has to apologize.
So you feel that he didn't speak with you before he came upon your property, and your bush in particular was taken down.
It's been there for weeks and hasn't bothered to come over and say hello, I'm new in the neighborhood or anything like that.
Yeah. So tell me about the line and how the two yards match up to each other a little bit.
Well, there's a space of about, I don't know, 25 yards between the two homes, and the property line runs down the middle there. We never had a fence or a hedge or anything to define it, but we've always known whose yard is whose yard, and we've always respected each other. Hell, most of the time, my deceased friend John would mow part of my lawn, I'd mow part of his.
That's nice.
It's been that kind of a neighborhood. It isn't now. I guess we've got to put up a fence.
Yeah.
Or maybe a barbed wire fence.
So what might you be interested in getting out of this session today?
I'd be interested in getting an apology. He wants an apology. I want an apology. I don't understand why I need to go apologize for him coming over and cutting down my stuff.
Tell me a little bit about the day that you decided to go over and speak with him and knock on his door. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a Saturday morning. I was up standing in my kitchen window looking out, having a cup of coffee like I do. And the next thing I know, I look out there and see that a whole swath of my yard has been cut. And the rose bush is gone. I blew my lid.
Sure. Now, have you had any conversations since that day?
No,
All right.
no. And that's fine.
All righty.
So the first thing you looked out, saw the bush cut, and you said you lost your temper, and that's what?
I was hurt. I mean, this was a very emotional thing for me.
It sounds like if I'd heard that
one of the
rose bush
things
had been
I used
planted in
to
honor of
do
your
was
wife.
look out there and say, there's her bush, and it's not there anymore.
He's making it sound like there was one rose bush that was clearly, you could really see, but this was an overgrown, this was an overgrown rose that, it was messy. His lawn, first of all, is a complete mess. It's not kept up. The grass is long. It's really an embarrassment to the neighborhood, to be honest to you. And I was doing him a favor. I was doing him a favor by just trying to clean up a little. Because obviously I didn't know the symbolic meaning of your bush.
What I'm hearing Josh say is that he's got some concerns about the appearances of the yard, and which is why he was mowing. His understanding or his take on it was that plants were coming over. There's different perspectives, but I'm hearing that's why there was why the plant got mowed. And what I'm hearing from Bert is that he would have liked to have been contacted before any kind of coming over onto his property, and particularly this bush. What I'm hearing had some particularly significant emotional importance for his deceased wife that I'm hearing you didn't know about.
Oh, how am I supposed to know about that?
Well, that's
you might ask if you can come over and mow my lawn.
All right, this is absurd.
This might be a good time to take a short break so my partner and I can confer a little bit, and then I think we'll bring you each back to talk privately. So, Jenny, who do you think we should bring in first?
Well, I'm sensing that Josh may be starting to turn here a little bit, so perhaps we could develop that.
Yeah, absolutely. I got that sense that he didn't, the information about the rosebush being a commemoration of Bert's wife, that seemed to really sink in towards the end. Bert we'd repeated that a few times. I think through those summaries and stuff, I think it kind of settled in that was important to him.
Yeah.
And about the communication. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe Bert, just because he still seems a little bit charged, but maybe you're right. It might, you're right. Maybe if we talk to Josh, we might have something to kind of bring to Bert at the end of the private session. Yeah.
I do feel we could diffuse some of the anger that's in Bert, so I think you have a good point in that thinking. And if he's sitting outside, it would be nice for him to be getting less angry instead of more angry waiting.
Well, in that case, why don't we start with Bert?
Okay.
Thank you for waiting, Bert. This session will be treated confidentially. At the end of the session, we'll check in with you to see if there's anything you do not want us to relay back to Josh in the joint session. If there's specific things you want us to share, we're glad to do that. We always encourage people to kind of do sharing themselves. Is there anything that you want to share that you didn't have a chance to in the joint session?
Well, I did lose my temper that morning, and I think I explained why. I don't lose my temper often, but that was a real shock to me. My life has been not easy since my wife passed away 2 years ago, and just a few months ago, my very best friend next door passed away. My kids still don't know that the rose bush is gone. They're going to be crushed. I mean, this was, I shouldn't have blown my temper like I did, but this kid just didn't. He's been there for a number of weeks now. He's never bothered to come over or say anything. I've been out in the yard and looked over, and maybe I should have gone over, but I wasn't feeling like.
So this is really upsetting to you.
It's terribly upsetting.
And all these people who've been in your lives for so long are now gone.
They're gone, and I'm getting old.
There's a new
it's not easy
coming.
it's not easy to keep this yard up, and the grass does need cutting, but it's not a disgrace. And the rose bush, there had been a little arbor out there on it. It's a rambling rose. It goes wherever it wants to go, and up until a month or so ago, there was a small arbor there that fell apart. I got rid of the arbor, and the rose kind of fell down. He came in, and he just wiped the whole thing out. He has one of those rotary mowers.
What I'm hearing is that upkeep on the yard has been tough. I mean, what I'm hearing is kind of the emotional component of it, but also just some of the upkeep. But you're saying it's not a disgrace, is the word that I think that Josh had used, but it's not that. But at the same time,
my wife and I have lived there until she passed away. We bought this house 45 years ago, We know everybody in the neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood with a lot of change. He's new.
So someone new is coming to the neighborhood.
And I don't think my other neighbors are terribly concerned about the way my yard looks. They understand I'm going through a tough time. It's always looked good in the past.
And you were saying that the arbor had kind of collapsed and the rose was being a rambling rose and doing what it does. So what I'm hearing in that is some understanding of how it could have gotten mowed, but at the same time, you know, some concern that he'd come onto your property and kind of mowed it without talking to you, especially being so new in the neighborhood. You know, it sounds like maybe what you would have done is, you know, introduce yourself as a neighbor. I think I'm hearing a little bit of a generational difference there. I've heard you refer to him as kid a few times, just someone new in the neighborhood.
Well, those are the kinder things that I've referred to him.
I heard earlier that you regret a little bit that you did lose your temper.
Yeah, I do feel bad about that.
Okay, and that the rose bush is, you know, it was so important to you. That's kind of why it happened. But
if it hadn't been for the rose bush, I'd have probably walked over there and said, "What the hell are you doing mowing my lawn?" Or I might even go over and said, "Hey, thanks for mowing the lawn. I really needed it."
Given that you are going to be neighbors for some time, is there anything you can think of that would make you feel better? Something that we might be able to accomplish today?
You know, one of the things I heard him say was his wife kind of forced him into doing this. I kind of like to meet her. I wouldn't mind meeting his family.
Okay, and tell me more about that.
I would like to have a great relationship with anybody who's living in that house. That's what we've always enjoyed.
Sure.
I don't even know what business he's in that he talks about. I don't know anything about him, you know,
So
other than he's a young guy who's moved in with a family.
So you'd like to get to know him a little better?
If we can get past this, yeah.
Yeah. What would it take for you to get past this?
Certainly an apology. I'm not looking for him to replace the rose bush. My kids did that.
to deal with the rough patch about the rose bush, an apology would be a place to start. And getting to know them is kind of a longer term, something just that you'd like to know everyone in the neighborhood, including them next door.
You can't force friendship. It has to.
That's true.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
But a really sincere recognition of what he did and a sincere apology would certainly be a way to start.
I heard you mention something about communication, about coming over and asking if he could mow. Is that anything you're interested in discussing with Josh?
Well, I certainly don't expect my neighbor to take care of my yard. I may have to hire some help. I'm not a wealthy man, but I may have to do something about that. I recognize that. But it's not a disgrace to the whole neighborhood.
You hear that? Is there anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Is there anything that you've talked about in this session that you specifically do not want us to relay back to Josh?
No, there's nothing.
Great.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for your patience, Josh. And before we begin, let me remind you that anything that you say in this private session will be confidential. At the end of our session now, you will be asked again if there's anything else that you wish not to be disclosed to the other side. So let's begin by asking, is there anything you wish to say now that you didn't feel comfortable saying when we were all together?
Bert had mentioned that I should have come over and introduced myself. And I've been thinking that also. I knew coming into the neighborhood that I wanted to go meet the neighbors and be a part of the community, but work has been so crazy and I just haven't had time. And we've just been moving in. So,
Sure.
So that's something I had wanted to do, but I just didn't have enough time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I've been feeling some pressure to keep up appearances in some way, because we just moved into this nice new house, and we're having a dinner party next week. And so some colleagues are going to be there, some friends, and I just wanted the place to look nice. I wanted
Sure.
the yard to look nice, and yeah, I probably shouldn't have cleaned up as much as I did, but I didn't think there was any harm, and I thought I was helping him out in some way.
So what you're thinking then is that you've just moved into this new house, you're busy keeping it up, but you're going to entertain, you want to make the house look as good as possible, and that you really did have it in your own mind that you would have liked to have had a high priority be to meet your neighbors. You just hadn't gotten to it yet.
Absolutely. In my last neighborhood, I was very close to my neighbors.
Yeah.
It sounds like what I heard you say, too, is that there's been some pressure with work and moving in and time constraints. And so it's kind of inhibited you from meeting your neighbors.
And you know, because of the time constraints, when I finally get a chance to clean up the yard, I want to do it.
Sure.
I don't want to have to wait and check, you know, is it okay if this overhanging plant, can I clean this up? I honestly thought that it had no symbolic value, and that part of it was on my yard. Mm-hmm. It was a rambling rose bush. Those things go everywhere.
Well, you've brought us to mediation, you and Bert to mediation today.
Yeah.
What is it that you would like to see happen here?
I don't want to have a bad relationship with a neighbor. I don't want to have to always walk down the street and hope I don't see him.
Yeah.
So I do want to, we don't need to be best friends, but just have a decent relationship, a cordial relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think his behavior was totally off base, so I would like an apology. And also, his yard, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I said it was, but it's messy, and it does reflect somewhat bad on me, being in a neighborhood with someone with a messy yard.
Sure.
So I would like him to at least take better care of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, in our session with Bert, he did talk about wanting to have a relationship with you, wanting to have that neighborly, so that his hope, like it sounds yours also is to get beyond this. Yeah. And so we need to focus on getting beyond this. And also, I think that he would he's been proud of his yard in the past and has kept it up. So it's also his desire to be able himself to keep his yard up. He's gone through some personal issues, some of which you know. And so he misses his wife and his friends, and et cetera, and he looks forward to a time when he can take better care of the yard as well.
Did he say when he could do that? Because
we didn't ask him that.
We didn't take time, but I mean that's a good thing to bring back. Maybe when we come back together, is to bring that up.
Okay.
One thing he'd mentioned that he was interested in and said it was okay for us to share. Of course, you'd heard that the rose bush was so important to him.
Yeah.
And it sounded like that had been new information to you. But one thing that was important to him, kind of as you were looking for an apology for Bert coming over and pounding on the door, he was apologetic about that. Maybe we can talk more about that in the joint session, but he was sorry that he lost his temper and realized that he probably shouldn't have. At the same time, he was looking for an apology from you for mowing the roses.
Yeah.
And we hear your perspective that, they were kind of rambling, being what they are, coming over into your yard at the same point. It meant a lot to him. And so that's one thing he was interested in.
I mean, if that's what it's going to take for us to move on, then fine. I do feel bad about it now that I've heard what he said.
Okay.
He did also indicate an interest in really getting to know you. So,
I'd be happy to have him over sometime for dinner. Yeah. That's what I had wanted to do anyway.
Sure.
We just hadn't got around to it.
Yeah. So do you have any suggestions when we do come back together as to how we can move you guys in the direction of having a positive relationship?
I'll tell him I'm sorry about mowing over the rose bush, and if he did want to have some relationship, then I'll invite him over.
Are you comfortable sharing that when we come back to a joint session, or would you rather that we did?
I can do it. Yeah.
That'd be great. Is there anything else you want to share before we bring you both back together?
No.
Is there anything you don't want us to say?
Yeah. Specifically.
I don't think you need to mention the part about how I've been so stressed and under pressure from work. I don't think that's important.
Okay. We will not.
Thank you for your patience as well, Bert, waiting outside while we all had our private sessions. And I think at this point it's time for us to talk again. Do either of you wish to start off by saying anything in particular as we sit together?
Well, we had talked about that I'd be willing to apologize, and I am sorry about cutting down the rose bush, and I had no idea it had symbolic value. I thought it was just a plant that was overgrown and that I was helping you out, but now I realize that that's not the case. And And I also do feel bad about not going over, introducing myself. I've been pretty busy, so I had wanted to do that.
Bert, how do you want to respond to that?
Well, I apologize for losing my temper the way I did, but that was, to me, that was just a very, emotional shock, and I just reacted very quickly. No, my lawn has needed cutting for a couple of weeks, and I know that, but it's not a disgrace in the neighborhood. And I have always in the past kept it very well. Even one of my son-in-laws offered a week or so ago. He said, Dad, if you're having trouble getting that lawn mowed, let me know. And I said, no, I can do it myself. Don't bother me. Maybe that was a dumb thing to do. So.
Part of wrapping up here is I think we want to leave you guys with an agreement, because it sounds like you're coming to some terms. And one thing I'm hearing is there's some agreement about Bert getting his lawn mowed, whether doing it himself or having a son-in-law do it. I'm hearing that you both are interested in that. Is that something that you both agree can happen?
I'll agree that I won't let it go 3 or 4 weeks like it is now. Will I be out there doing it absolutely perfectly, whistle clean every single week? I don't know. Whether I can do that, but it won't look like it does now again.
All right, and I want to make sure that the other plants in your yard, they also get cleaned up. Well, I don't need your lawn looking perfect, but it would be really good if it could at least be somewhat neat.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm willing to do.
Okay, then good.
And
By what I think is somewhat neat.
Well, so what I'm hearing is that there's agreement about Bert's lawn being kept to some standard. He's saying not out there every day, but at the same time that it'll be trimmed and kind of squared away a little bit more. Is that something you can both agree to?
I can agree to that.
Yeah, sure.
And one thing that I'd heard you both talk about before is some communication. Bert had been very interested in having you come over and ask permission before you kind of go on his side of the lawn. And we talked about that in private sessions as well. Is that something you guys want to discuss?
Well, I think we learned the lesson here that now that at least I know who my neighbor is, I'm going to, if something else comes up, and you never know what could come up, I'll come over, and it's not too far, and we'll chat.
I'll come over without banging on the door.
Thank you. There's a doorbell. You can just press it once.
We've always had a great relationship with our neighbors, and I don't know whether we can get past this or not, but I'm certainly willing to try.
All right. Yeah.
So the two things I've got is about the yard upkeep, and then just about communication, that if anything else comes up or there's any other reason that you'll communicate in a less angry, a more civil sort of way between each other. And what I also heard is that you're both interested in kind of furthering your neighborly relationship, but I'm wondering, do you want that in the agreement, or
We don't need that. I mean,
okay.
No.
Well,
That's either going to work out or it isn't, but we're both intelligent people,
Okay.
I think, and good people,
Is there anything?
except when we're behind a power mower.
Okay. Well, then, in that case, I've got the 2 points written up here.
Okay.
Why don't we have you guys sign off, and we'll get you out of
sure.
here.
All right.
Thank you very much
All
for
right.
participating. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you,
you.
Bert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
All right.
All right, Josh.
So we got some.
Through helping
chatting
each
right
side
over.
understand the other person's
Bert, I'm
views,
glad you
and
came
through
in.
helping
Josh,
the
I'm glad
parties
you-
identify
All right,
key
come on in.
interests,
See you again.
mediation often leads to transformative outcomes.
Hadn't got around to it.
Yeah.
his words were he didn't want to force a friendship, but at the same time, I think I understood, pulling the meaning from his words was that he was interested in moving down that road possibly.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
So do you have any suggestions when we do come back together as to how we can move you guys in the direction of having a positive relationship?
I'll tell him I'm sorry about going over the rose bush, and I mean, if he did want to have some relationship, then I'd be happy to have him over for dinner sometime.
Okay. Great. Are you comfortable sharing that when we come back to a joint session, or would you rather that we did? We encourage, as much as you can, and sometimes it can be a little tough, but
I can do it, yeah.
That'd be great. Is there anything else you want to share before we bring you both back together?
No.
Is there anything you don't want us to say?
Yeah. Specifically.
I don't think you need to mention the part about how I've been so stressed and under pressure from work. I don't think that's important.
Okay. We will not.